very touchy issues. You need your imam, right? You need the operation going. So how many full-time employees do you have? Are you gonna lay off people? Are you gonna reduce the salary by maybe 10 or 15 or 20%? Your supply, what is your utility? How much is you're spending on utility today, and how are you gonna reduce that amount? And definitely, we need to compare it to our revenue. I'm just going to give you an example. I mean, ICW, we've seen, we raise $1, we spend $1. Now we raise a 50 cents on every dollar we spend. So our revenue is cut about 50%. And maybe different masjid is unique, as I said, and it could be a different percentage of losses. You need to look at that and determine exactly what is the dollar ratio between my revenue and expense. Now, we talk about protecting and expanding our revenue. So you need to make sure that stay in touch with your donors. It is very important to, you don't know how many people that lost their job in your community. You need to be able to use social media and create an online donation portal. And you need to also make sure you link your donation request to the services that you're providing. You can ask for money, but community need to see that your masjid or your organization is providing the services to the community. They're not just going to pay for the operation of your organization. They also want to make sure that you are doing services to the community. I'm just going to give you an example. The other day, I was in the masjid on Friday, and one of the donors came in. The masjid was closed, knocking on the door, and he has an envelope in his hand. He said, I got this check for you. I want to donate it, and I have more coming. But I want to ask you something. Are you providing any services to the community? I said, of course we do. And I went around and showed him what we are doing, how we're preparing like food basket boxes to distribute to the needies in our community. And he felt good, because you need to relate those services, what you're providing, to your request for additional funds. Next. Now, potential sources of revenue other than borrowing, because this is, I think, the core what we need to focus on. You start with small circle and you grow wider and wider. The main function of a board member is to raise funds, no question about that. So you need to start with board member to try, not necessarily the board member need to, but each board member have to commit a specific number, a specific dollar that they need to bring to the organization. The friend, family, associate, maybe individual donation. We need to look for Islamic organizations that give grants. Islamic Relief provided earlier, like a small grant for organization that's providing social services to the community. NATE might be a source, and maybe other organizations. We need to look also for the zakat committees. That money is there. Maybe we can tap on some of that money to help for relief effort as well as the masjid operation. Now, in terms of CIOGC, besides zakat and other loan and grant out there, maybe we need to look at support from our member organization. You all know that CIOGC is doing a great job putting all the organizations together. And as the brother Kamal just mentioned earlier, this task force is like touching every corner of our core services to our community. And with that said, we need to support that effort. So member organization should think also about how to support CIOGC to maintain its operation as well. Grant, federal, state, local, could be grant from like other charitable organizations. We don't know right now. Maybe we need to monitor that on a regular basis. Which organization that will be providing services to communities, religious or non-religious organizations that provide services to communities. We need to make sure that we keep on the lookout for those type of organizations. And of course, community members. The most likely individual will donate money to your organization is your community member. There's a number of ideas we'll talk about. That's virtual fundraising. There's a tool out there, maybe in the next slide or so, talking about how we're going to set up a virtual fundraising. There's an organization called Muwahid. I'm sure most of the masajid in the Chicagoland area, they use Muwahid. It's right here. This is for ICW. And we put here virtual fundraising. This is brand new. We just set it up a couple of days ago. And you set the goal of how much money do you need, and you can connect this virtual fundraising to a YouTube channel, broadcast it live. Maybe you could do like virtual fundraising on Sunday between 6 and 8 o'clock, for example, and you set it up and launch it, and it'll be on your Facebook. And Facebook could be connected to Zoom, multiple feed from a different audience, different presenter, and just keep pushing that link to your member organization, to your community members, and have them join that live feed on Facebook. And of course, the main function of that is to ask your community to donate. So that's one of the idea. The second idea is a telethon. We have most organizations have like a multiple databases. It could be one of the databases, your QuickBook Online. It could be from your Muwahid platform that capture the member names, email address, and phone number. And it could be some other database that you have as well. But you need to make sure that schedule that, sit down and make a phone call and to each individual. People have time right now sitting at home. Maybe you can solicit some of those volunteers to do that. But you need to make sure that you have a good script when you're calling people. You don't want to just call and give me money. You got to check on your community, provide services, outline the services you're providing, and see if they need help and if they're okay, and then introduce the idea that your masjid, your organization need your help as well. Please donate generously. One of the great opportunity right now is Ramadan. Ramadan is coming, and definitely we're not going to be doing Taraweeh on the first night of Ramadan. So we may go into all Ramadan and we're not even going to be able to come to the masjid if that stay at home extended until the end of May or beyond. So how we need to prepare. What we need to do if we don't have Ramadan in the masjid. So are we going to do something virtual? Very important to capitalize on your imam, because your imam is a key person in Ramadan. You need to ensure that, but in order, he cannot do the magic unless you do the preparation, okay? You need to set up those virtual fundraising events. You need to have the Zoom out there. You need to have the YouTube channel. You need to be able to connect, find the right tool or the right social media or a combination of, so you can connect with your community on a regular basis. Maybe you could do virtual Taraweeh, or maybe Maghrib, you do Isha, and maybe a recitation of Quran and have people come in. Maybe so each masjid, you need to look at those opportunity and those ideas and how you would be able to connect with your community the best way possible. And of course, one of the things is a 2.5% donation, right? That's what you need is for zakat donation in Ramadan. If you could go back a little bit, yeah, here we go. So it's very important. You might go also, like for others, like fundraising tool, like GoFundMe or Go Lunch Good. Those are other organizations. You can push that as well. So you need to make sure. One of the idea that came to mind the other day when I was here on Friday, a member came in and he wanted to personally drop out the check for donation. And imagine that I wasn't here or the masjid is closed and I only have a piece of paper at the door. Okay, call me in case of emergency, the masjid is closed. So if your facility can be accommodating, if you could put like maybe a box behind the door and people maybe they can come in, but make sure it's secured, accessible from outside for people to come in and put money, cash or check, whatever. So it's an opportunity as well. Don't lose on that. You never know. People want to take a walk and they have $50 or $500 and they want to donate, and they can stop by your masjid and have the ability to drop it off in one of the slots. Next. This is the hardest part. It's so difficult, to. I was thinking earlier today an analogy of what happened to our Muslim organization. It's like somebody, a corporate employee, have a job making like $100,000 a year, and suddenly gets laid off, and now he lives on like $500 or $450 unemployment check per week. So that's probably less than $2,000 a month. What this person would do, okay? If somebody, and then many of them, over 10 million people right now in the same situation, they lost their job. Imagine this organization, it's like similar to an individual lost their job. First thing they're gonna do, they're gonna cut the cost. They don't eat out, they don't go on vacation. There's so many different things that they cost in order to survive on a like $2,000 a month paycheck or unemployment check. So similar situation here. We need to really look at it, how hard it is. We need to think about it, how we're gonna cut our expenses. We say we're gonna go back to normal. I'm sorry, I don't think we're gonna be able to go back to normal for at least a year, maybe more. This is gonna be a big impact and an operation, on raising funds, even if the problem disappear, like say in July, and then the trickle down effect on that will go on maybe a year beyond that. So maybe it's a time, this has happened for a good reason, to kind of look at our organization. What is the most important expenses that I need to have in order to run a lean operation for the masjid? So think about that. Think about salary. Yeah, I know you don't want to lay off your employee, but can you let him go for a month or two? Maybe not. Maybe that's too harsh. What about if you say, listen, the difficulty. Can we cut the salary by maybe 10% or so? Help your masjid a little bit. We can help you, and that's temporary. Once the issue is over, we can come back and reinstate the pay rate as it used to be. Utility. Masajid are closed, so all lights are off. So most of it is off. You still have computer running, server running, refrigeration running. So you have some of that still going on. Maybe the parking lot light is still on, but you need to turn off this. So this is what probably automatically will increase your utility by a certain percentage. What you need to, can you defer some of those utility bills? Maybe we can do, maybe collectively, CIO, maybe you can call ComEd in the Chicagoland area and say, hey, listen, we have 50 plus Muslim organizations. I'm sure churches will probably do the same thing. If the revenue is come, can you defer or can you freeze the monthly payment until the problem is resolved and everything back to some normality. So this is something that we need to think about as well. Services, you probably, some of the service, like Friday, we used to have security individual at the front of the masjid providing security. We don't have that anymore. So there's some services that we have, the janitorial service. I don't know if you have your employees or you have a subcontractor. So you need to examine that as well. As a subcontractor, there's no work, there's no pay. That's a good thing. But if you have an employee that's doing, so we need to also think about how some of that we can outsource. So it's just, again, this is a roundtable discussion. What it worked for me may not work for you, but we really, I somehow in the last week or so, everybody thought like the magic of government support, government loan can solve the problem.
So, Brother Ibrahim, this is Irshad. I think we're exceeding the time. Can you quickly go through last few slides, and then inshallah we'll get the floor to other speakers. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, we talk about this one. Just go to the next one. Okay. Again, most of you are very well. I'm not saying providing anything like different. You know your P&L, you know your cash flow statement. Analyze the magnitude of your losses. Put a strategy to protect other income. Monitor your recurring income on a regular basis. You might have to see some drop in also like payroll, a check payment rejected, or maybe donation has been or declined or error. Make sure analyze those on a regular basis. Make sure that this income that's coming is protected. So again, similar thing, utility insurance that you must have, and you don't have the must, the need, and want. Again, look at those, examine it very carefully, and I think you'll do the right thing. Next. Okay, another good thing, and instead of paying money for the government, because on loan application interest, some of it may be forgiven, but look for a good loan from your community member and business. Look for like Islamic organization, similar to NAID or maybe Islamic Relief or other organizations. Look for, again, government loan here. These are the two loans that are provided, but again, those are loans are meant to be paid back and interest will be paid. So each masjid, they follow different fatwa. I'm going to leave it to every masjid to determine whether they really can borrow with a minimum interest rate. Right now, I believe the non-for-profit, they offer in like 2.75% for non-for-profit organizations. So the question for you, do you really want to go into borrow money to pay for your payroll? I mean, that's the first thing is the payroll. And then the second one is the small business administration loan. I'm not sure exactly what that rate is, but that's the idea is. But look for money that you don't have to pay back. Look for grants. Look for your community member. Look for the support. And I think that is the best way to do it. Again, we have some tools. And if you need any help, please call me. Muwahid is providing a good platform to set up the fundraising, virtual fundraising event. It could be multiple events, different events. It could be like, choose your night. You can do actually, our ICW, we canceled our fundraising dinner, which was scheduled for March 22nd. And now we're trying to set up a virtual fundraising, inshallah, when things kind of settle a little bit on a specific night. We have the platform to help us do that virtually. And we're building that knowledge and experience as we move forward. Once we get to a level where, we have one night, maybe we can get 2 hours, let me know if you need any help. I can connect you with the right people to help your organization to use this technology to help you raise funds online. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Again, it's very important as an organization, we need to stay together, work together, exchange ideas so we can prevail together. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ibrahim, for a detailed presentation. Just please go ahead and post your questions if you have on the chat. And with that, we will bring up to the next speaker, Madiha, and she's a special counsel for Muslim advocates. And without taking any more time, go ahead, Sister Madiha, your floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some information today. Just a quick question to the person who's managing the screen. There was a link to a fact sheet that I shared. Is that also going to be shared as well? The fact sheet that was created by Muslim advocates?
Yeah, Brother Mitchell, it's on your email.
I'll go ahead and get started, but I just wanted to, I think it'll be helpful for folks to be able to see that fact sheet as well. So today I'm going to be talking very briefly about some of the nonprofit funding that is available for charities, nonprofits, and we have also confirmed that mosques that are registered as 501c3s may also be eligible for this funding as well. I just want to quickly start off by saying that anything that I share with you today is for informational purposes only and should not be interpreted as legal or accounting advice. It's simply an opportunity for you all to have as much information as a way of applying for this funding if you can, and it should not be deemed as a substitute for expert legal or other professional advice that's tailored to your specific circumstances. With that in mind, I know we have limited time, so I don't know how many questions we'll be able to get to. I can't really answer specific questions, but I can give you a high-level overview, and then our recommendation is that you contact your local bank as quickly as possible to get more information about this and to go through the application process. So as many of you know, there was a stimulus bill passed by the government called the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which is also known as the CARES Act. And among other resources that are included in that CARES Act to aid Americans during this very difficult time, there is a particular amount of funding close to, actually the specific amount is $349 billion of funding to support small businesses and nonprofits. Included in the CARES Act is a program called the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, which allows for the distribution of loans up to $10 million each for small businesses, 501c3 nonprofit organizations, and other eligible entities where they have specifically named other nonprofit categories that would qualify. So as I mentioned before, the mosques, community centers, and Islamic schools in our community that are registered 501c3 organizations should be eligible to apply for the funding. Note that as part of your application process for this PPP program, you will be asked to certify that you have not received another loan under the CARES Act. Now, we talk a lot about this loan program, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of the specifics momentarily. But the key components here are some questions that we've been getting is how much funding would my organization be eligible to receive? The maximum loan amount will be the lesser of either 2.5 times the average gross payroll costs incurred by the organization in the 12 months prior to the loan, or $10 million. So basically, in other words, you're going to take a look at your expenses for 2019, specifically your payroll cost expenses. And they, on the application, they have specifically identified what counts as payroll costs, including wages and other things. You'll take a look at your 2019 costs for payroll. You multiply that number by 2.5, and whatever that amount is going to likely be the maximum loan that you would be eligible for. The period of the loan that this will be used for is for expenses incurred by the organization between February 5th and June 30th of 2020. that is known as the covered period for the loan. But the key here is that you're only going to get money, you're only going to get forgiveness, which I'll talk about in a minute, for 8 weeks of that time frame. So even if you apply for funding, you're only going to get 8 weeks worth of forgiveness for that. So what can the funding be used for? Now, the purpose of this program, as it states in the name, is Paycheck Protection Program. So really the goal here is to be able to maintain your employees during this difficult time. Now, the challenge here is that, you know, different people are, as we heard through the previous presentation, that, you know, people are taking a very close look at their expenses and determining whether they have to let go of some of their employees or you know, reduce their employment at this time. There are some key aspects of this funding that is important to think about, but overall, the Payroll Protection Program can be used for payroll expenses. Approximately 75% of what you use the loan for has to be dedicated to payroll expenses. The other 25% can be used towards rental payments, mortgage, utility costs, etc. Again, I'm going through this very quickly and at a high level, so any specific questions you'll have to talk with your bank and SBA approved lender, but this is just to give you a very quick idea. When it comes to the loan forgiveness aspect, which is what I know a lot of people are wondering about, this SBA states that a loan will be fully forgiven if the funds are used for payroll costs, interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities. But because, as I mentioned, because there's likely high subscription, at least 75% of the forgiven amount must have been used for payroll. Forgiveness will be based, and here is really the key aspect. Forgiveness will be based on the employer maintaining or quickly rehiring all of the full-time employees that you had prior to the loan and maintaining salary levels. If you happen to have reduced your salary or wages, there will be a proportionate reduction in the amount of forgiveness that you receive. So for example, if you reduce anything below 25% of the original salary and wages, then there will be a reduction. If it's a 10% reduction or a 15% reduction, then it likely won't be impacted. Last thing I'll mention really quickly is that if it is determined that the loan must be paid back in part or in full, then payments will be deferred for 6 months and the loan will have an interest. As far as we know, specifically for the Payment Protection Program, the latest that we have heard is that the interest rate would be at 1% as of April 2nd, 2020. There's a lot of changes happening through this process. The application enrollment opened actually on Friday, April 3rd. But we've already heard from people that the banks are not ready yet. Some banks have been approved and are ready to go, but there's a lot of confusion. So our recommendation is that you contact your bank as soon as possible. Most of your local banks that you bank with and have a relationship will likely have an approved SBA appointed lender through the bank. So you should contact your bank first. If you need more information, the fact sheet that you have here actually has a website where you can learn more information on the SBA website, which is the Small Business Administration website. And there's also an application there as well. So I'll stop there. And of course, if we have time for questions, I'll do my best.
Thank you, Sister Madiha, for your question. And then the fact sheet and other information will be shared with the participant. We have more than 90 attending it right now, and then we are opening up more on our Facebook Live streaming as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brother Salah. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين نبينا محمد صلوات ربي عليه وتسليم أما بعد. Let me just talk about NATE a little bit. NATE is basically a Waqf organization that has approximately 260 Islamic centers and schools under its wings. We have, basically our purpose is to revive the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ by having the waqf, established here in the US. And we were able to, alhamdulillah, protect many centers from basically falling out of their mission by making sure that they remain places of worship during very difficult times. It started back in 1973, and still up to now, alhamdulillah, we have in this area here, we have approximately 8 to 10 Islamic centers that are associated with NATE. One of the things that we've had once we had this problem is that we actually extend interest-free loans to our Islamic centers, to the entrusted Islamic centers, meaning that the ones that are part of the Waqf program. And as a consequence of the difficulties of collecting funds, we basically told them that they can actually stop payments on those loans for approximately 6 months, and we'll reassess the situation, inshallah, in a few months. I think that the problem that many Islamic centers and many Islamic organizations is that they lack the planning that is required to overcome such difficult times. We at NATE, we try to educate our community as much as we can about the need to have endowments, to have financial planning, to make sure that they invest or at least excess funds, or make sure that they take a portion of their daily funds or weekly funds and put it away in a way that would be available to them during difficult times. Not only that they would actually be able to protect those funds, they would be able to also get a yield for having those funds with NATE. We have a few Islamic centers already here in Chicago that are part of the ICCF, which is the Islamic Centers Cooperative Fund. And, when they needed the money, the money is there. ICW can vouch for this. And this is something that I think that they ought to, all Islamic centers ought to do. They should not always wait till we have a calamity of the sort and then react. We should be always proactive in managing our funds and making sure that we have a proper budgeting, proper cash flow management, and to make sure that at least our cash flow management allows for an Islamic center or an Islamic organization to run for at least 3 to 6 months without the need for additional funds. That is really that really should be the way of doing things. Can we move to the next slide, please? The next one. What is the ICCF? It's the Islamic Centers Cooperative Fund. It was established 40 years ago. We have approximately 200 Islamic centers. It has over $50 million in it. We've never lost a penny for our investors. The yield is over 5%. Last year's yield was 8%. I'm just making sure that this is available to Islamic centers and they're aware of it so that they can use it for the future, inshallah, if they ever need to establish an endowment or establish a fund. I call it a bad weather fund, when we have such difficulties such as the coronavirus problem that we are facing today. The next one, please. Those are a list of some of the Islamic centers that we have that are part of this ICCF. They are very reputable organizations, and like an example, Moss Foundation of Chicago. I was just talking to the sheikh over there, and he's saying that they are losing $30,000 a week, $30,000 a week in donations every week. So, the fact that they actually have funds saved is really a way to continue operations without interruption. So that's a need that Islamic centers ought to think about, and they ought to plan for it. Move on to the next one, please. Now, many people say, what is the COVID-19 CARES Act? It's really a legislation. Its purpose, its main purpose is to help American taxpayers, businesses to overcome the economic difficulties resulting from the coronavirus pandemic. Meaning it's really a way, the government is saying that if I don't help those people, the economy, people are going to lay off their people. If they lay off their people, once this coronavirus subsides, most businesses will be lost. Most restaurants will be out of business. Most of other, and the economy will be, to revive the economy would be almost impossible to do so. So the purpose, the government purpose, is not just to help, the taxpayers and to help businesses, but to make sure that the economy doesn't tank over the long term. For the individuals, the help is very basic. They will be given adults $1,200, kids $500. Of course, it has to be within a certain limit. There's a phase-out threshold, for making payments to some of those families. If the amount exceeds $198,000 for somebody who's married, filing jointly, they will begin to lose that subsidy. They're also allowing for IRA withdrawal of $100,000 with no penalties. And they're also allowing for the waiving the required minimum distribution for 2020 for people over 70 years old. And they're also allowing for a $300 above the line contribution deduction, meaning that you don't have to worry about what your standard deduction is if you were to make a contribution to a not-for-profit. You can still get that deduction. And of course, employers can pay $5,250 against a student loan tax-free. So this is a way of actually encouraging the employer to help out, their employees by paying some of their student loans. The other thing that they also have is, in terms of, before I talk about this, there's also the unemployment benefits. The unemployment benefits, they're basically going to be given $600 in addition to whatever the state is paying to a particular individual. Now, for Islamic centers and for Islamic schools, I think that they need to be unselfish and think about how, what would be beneficial to the employee. If I was to lay off an employee, because I know especially in Islamic schools, they don't pay as much in terms of wages. So what happens is that they need to calculate how much will the person be actually able to make if they were to be laid off versus if they were to be kept and be able to get the payroll protection, the Paycheck Protection Act to help. Some people get a pay of, say, $500. So if they were to be laid off, they might be able to get the $450 from the state of Illinois, but then they would also get another $600 from the federal government to pay for that unemployment insurance, for the unemployment. So it actually may be helpful to actually lay off those people because it would be beneficial to them. But that's something that each center or each school need to decide whether that is an option. For centers who are paying or maintaining a payroll, they can actually delay 50%. They can get a 50% discount on their payments for Social Security, which means that they save up to $10,000. So it's a little bit of a saving. Now, when it comes to the Paycheck Protection, they cover the salaries and wages, payroll taxes, utilities, payment to subcontractors. And this is where some Islamic centers, they use the cash method to pay some people. Nowadays, it will become evident that that is a huge mistake, because what happens is that those people who are getting cash because they may be cleaning the center or doing some little work, but they are not getting a 1099, those people with the 1099, they really now don't have the option to go and apply for unemployment, because now they have actually made a provision to have somebody who is a subcontractor getting a 1099 to be able to apply for unemployment. Additionally, even when you apply for the the Paycheck Protection, you can actually include the 1099 payments to those individuals as part of the loan, the forgivable loan that you would apply for. So it's sometimes not following the law to the letter sometimes will come to haunt you later on. This is the Paycheck Protection is really something the government is giving you that money basically free of charge, as long as your payments, as you maintain your payroll, as long as you rehire, if you had fired any employee as long as you rehire them. And at the end of June, you maintain that you have actually paid your payroll and associated expenses of the payroll are 75% of that loan, the government says, I will forgive you that loan. Now, if you do not meet that criteria, then it becomes a loan that you have to pay over a certain amount of time, and it's 1%. So that's one thing. So I would urge every Islamic center to really consider applying for the Paycheck Protection because it's basically, I mean, it's a government giving it to you, It's not really a gift. I mean, you as a taxpayer, you're paying that money to the government. And not only that, most of that money, that's the $2 trillion, the government is actually borrowing that money. So you will pay for it by your taxes anyhow, one way or another. So I think that every Islamic center, every Islamic school, every Islamic organization ought to take advantage of this and use it to maintain, inshallah. By the way, this is the third act that they actually did in March, and they're already working on a fourth one because, you know, the $2 trillion will not be sufficient. And I think that there will be another package to actually supplement the CARES Act. The next one. Yeah, this particular loan is not the one that you should be using. I put it over there so that you do not use this one. This is the one, this is the application for the loan for the $10,000, which would be basically a grant by the government. Now, if you go beyond $10,000, it becomes a loan, but $10,000 is definitely a gift or a grant. The rest would be a loan, and that would be something that you do not want to apply for unless you really need it badly. Can we go to the next one? This is basically the application for the application is very, very, very simple. I mean, it's you have to put your name. You have to basically take the average of your payroll for the past 12 months. You know, you'd have to go back from February 15th back to February 15th of 2019, find out what the monthly average is, and then you basically multiply by 2.5, and you put that number down, and you make certain assertions that you are not, you know, that none of the people who are associated with that center have any issues with the law. They are not convicted. They're not felon. They're not this, and you sign it and you give it to the bank. But make sure that that information is accurate, because the lender has a form like similar to this, where they have to make an assertion that they have verified some of these data that you are providing. And in June, when the time for forgiveness comes about, the bank will ask you for verifying the information. So do not overstate things, and do not, of course, understate things, because if you understate, you lose out. But if you overstate, that means you commit something that's, I don't want to say fraud, but you know, you will be able, you potentially could lose the loan, the forgiveness aspect of the loan. By this, I think that that's all I have to say. As far as NATE is concerned, we are trying to reach out to other relief organizations and Islamic organizations, the larger ones, to see if we can establish a fund to help smaller Islamic centers. I will try to keep you updated on this issue, but it's, you know, most of the Islamic centers, unfortunately, Islamic relief organizations, as well as NATE, we have suffered through this just as much as many centers. The stock market has not been very helpful, and most of those organizations have investments in there, and we've lost a lot of money in there. But inshallah, we will do our best to try to help Islamic centers, especially the needy ones, as much as we possibly can, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khair.
Brother Ubaidullah, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
This is Dr. Mahmoud Ismail from
Yes, I know you, brother.
How are you? Is there a way we can get what you said in either in a letter or in publication or in a tape, or are they taping? Is the organization, is we CIUHC, are we taping this meeting?
I believe they are taping it. Actually, Nate, we were the first one to send out to maybe 3,500 Islamic centers and organizations an explanation of the COVID-19. We sent out exactly what we need to do in order to apply for that protection, the paycheck protection feature out of it. And inshallah, we will, if you read it, I also have, by the way, a spreadsheet that actually simplifies the entire process. So if you send me your emails, addresses, I will send you an Excel spreadsheet. All you have to do is just plug in the numbers in it and automatically calculates the 2.5%, the 2.5 times that amount, and so that you can just add it to the application.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. To our presenters this afternoon. But let me respond to some of the questions that have been raised here toward the end of our webinar. We have received the presentation of Brother Ubaidullah, as well as Brother Antar, and from the Muslim Advocates. These are PDF presentations that inshallah we can and will share with you in that. And if Brother Ubaidullah, if you will also share that spreadsheet, we will make sure inshallah those that have registered get to benefit from that tool in helping them calculate the relief they could realize under the Payroll Protection Program. Now, there have been a number of questions asked here. If I can take a moment, because what we will do for benefit of the participants, we have copied all the questions that have been raised, and inshallah, we will give those to our presenters, and if you will, once again, share that your emails with us, we can provide those answers. But at this particular point in time, if I can we can start to go through those questions right quickly and take the next 5 or 10 minutes to answer. And then the last point is, Dr. Ismail, you asked, is this being recorded? Our webinar this afternoon is being recorded. And inshallah, once it is downloaded from the site, we will provide the mechanism for which you can receive a copy or download it for your personal review. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Brother Mitchell, go ahead and read the questions, and then we will give the floor for presenters to answer those.
All right. Just a moment, please. There is a question asked about, we have reached out to SBA approved banks and they advise that they are only supporting their current clients. What alternatives are there for if your bank is saying they don't do SBA loans or you're not a current SBA client?
Yeah, this is Madiha. I'll go ahead and quickly just try to address that. So yes, we've heard from some, and I think there were a couple of other comments on this as well, that Bank of America, for example, when they started opening and accepting on Thursday and Friday, they said they were only doing so for their existing clients. We actually recommend that you contact your bank. We presumably, if you have funds that are coming into your mosque or to your nonprofit, you should have some sort of banking relationship with a bank. So our recommendation is that you first contact your bank. And if for some reason your bank is not an SBA approved bank or lender, then there is a list that you can that you can use from the SBA website to actually look for an approved lender, and try to focus on some banks that are smaller and more local rather than some of the large you know, Bank of America, Chase, and some of the larger banks, they may not be able to facilitate for non-existing clients at the moment. Now, the key here is that this is first come, first serve funding that's available. One of the speakers mentioned that, you know, there's a hope that another piece of legislation will be passed to include additional funding for nonprofits. But this Paycheck Protection Program is on a first come, first serve basis. So we recommend you do this as quickly as possible. And I know it's been challenging because there has been a lot of confusion, but we just, you know, try to contact your bank as quickly as possible and have all of the information that you need for the application form ready to go.
All right. The next question, if I can direct it to both of you, Brother Obeidullah, you kind of answered it, but I think people are a little confused. If you lay off employees and do not rehire certain employees, how will that affect your opportunity for the loan forgiveness portion of the program?
Yes, you have to decide, do you want to get the money for the payroll for the two months, or do you want to give the opportunity to that employee to actually make more money during that time period? That is an ethical question more than a financial question. If I was on the side of not ethics aside, I would just hire them and pay them regular and get the subsidy from the paycheck protection that way. But as I said, if you want to be unselfish and ethical, you may want to look at for the interests of the employee and say, how much more money can they make, especially for Islamic schools where they're usually underpaid, and I think it's an ethical question more than anything else.
Okay,
sorry, I just wanted to add, just to clarify on the actual component of that question that relates to the application itself and the forgiveness component. The way they look at that is based on your full-time employment. So as far as I understand, if you rehire for those positions, even if you're not necessarily rehiring the same individuals, they are basically looking at your full-time employment and the salary that's going towards that. So what you have right now for full-time employment should be the same as what you had prior to the loan, and that's what they're going to take into consideration. But you know, as far as what works best for your community and for your employees, of course, each individual organization is going to have to make that decision on their own.
A related question is, for nonprofit organizations in the application process, at any time, are they going to be required to submit a certified audited statement as to this information?
No, they would not. They would not have to provide certified statements, but they would have to provide reasonable documentation that proves those expenses. Meaning that if you're taking money for rent, then you should have a lease, or you should have checks to back that up. If you're claiming certain things for the internet or for office expenses, for certain things that are covered, utilities, you have to have proof of that. You may have to provide your 941, for payroll. So there are things that you have to provide, but then you don't have to have audited statements, because not all centers or all Islamic or even Islamic regular organizations, they don't have that option of auditing.
Okay, and can you both, once again, directing this question to both of you again, please. There's a little bit of confusion based on the questions raised about the interplay between the disaster loan and the Payroll Protection Program. How does it, can you apply for both, or should you choose one over the other? What's your advice to the listeners for that?
I would leave that to Madiha, even though I believe that you can file for both. But I am, but you see, for not for profit, it would be very difficult, because in the first loan, that $10,000 loan, grant and loan, you have to certify that it would be done, that all the expenditures would be made for secular reasons, for secular services. And since you are a not-for-profit, you're not providing secular services. So I would think that the first loan, which came out as a result of the second legislation that they had in March, you would not be eligible for that as a not-for-profit. but Madiha maybe have a different answer, so I'd like to hear her comments.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So as far as we've been told, and again, I can't speak to very specific circumstances of individual organizations, but as a general matter, we have been told that if you are receiving funding through another CARES Act program, that you may be ineligible to receive the PPP. The reason for that is because they said that as part of the application process, they're going to ask for a certification that you have not received funding from any other part of the program. So, and based on, the brother's recommendation, it sounds like for nonprofits in particular, the PPP is the better route to go. So we would recommend you probably try that first, at least.
Following up on the question about the Payroll Protection Program again, there's some questions about the eligibility for forgiveness as it pertains to individuals who you've laid off. To the extent that the question is, if all the employees for whom you're basing your loan application for the payroll protection plan is, if that person, or as they just said, someone equivalent, is hired before June 30th, would you still be entitled to the full forgiveness? I guess really the thrust of the question goes is, how soon must you hire somebody back before you, in order to protect or get full benefit of the forgiveness portion of this program?
Yes, because it's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Madiha.
I was just going to say, because the period of the covered period of the loan is through June 30th, they are saying that, yes, as long as you are able to refill those positions by June 30th, you will still be eligible for forgiveness. But again, it also depends on maintaining the salary at the same rate or similar to, not more than 25% reduced from the original salary. So there are a number of factors that go into that, but the June 30th date is correct as far as we understand.
So to the extent that
the date is correct, but the issue is that there is that threshold. You have to have 75% of that money go into payroll. So if you don't have 75% go into payroll, you risk not having that loan forgiven.
Thank you. And then the other question is can 1099 employees also apply? And they're using an EIDL. I'm not sure what that abbreviation is.
Yes, they can.
Pardon me?
Yes, they can.
It can be included in the organization's payroll protection application. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. The last question will for this afternoon, and please silence your your microphone, please. The last question is there a role that an organization such as NATE or the Council of Islamic Organizations, as either of you see, can serve to be an intermediary to help open up avenues for people for banks to make these payroll protection loans available to them? And it's not really a legal question. I guess it's more a logistical question. Do you see it in terms of how this is being rolled out by the regulatory agencies? Is there a role for an intermediary to step in to facilitate these applications?
There is really no need for a CIRGC or NATE to get involved. It's a very, very simple process. But if anybody needs help, they can easily call us, and we will try to guide them in the best way we know how, as to how to proceed. The process is very simple at this point, and it's not complicated at all. So,
would you?
So if somebody has a question, what do I do with my rent? How do I include that? I pay some people through 1099. Does that qualify? Does that not qualify? If they were to call us up, we will give them a guidance based on our best knowledge, but it does not constitute a legal advice or an accounting advice, because we are not.
I think the thrust of the question goes to is not the filling out of the application. The problem that a number of people based on their questions have encountered is that their banks are refusing or not accepting their applications. Do either of you have any further insight on that? I know, Sister Ahmadiyya, you already kind of addressed it, but this still is probably the most frequent concern that's been expressed in our chats.
Well, the SBA already has a list of all those organizations and institutions that accept the application. So if there is a problem, I think we can, and if too many people are facing that issue, then definitely we can use, whether it's here or we use other legal organization to see as to why those people are being prevented from being able to apply and exercise whatever influence that we have to change things.
I think one of the issues that we're seeing with the banks is that this program was rolled out by the federal government without sufficient time to the speakers. I'm sorry, to the banks and the lenders that would be responsible for approving those applications or submitting those applications on behalf of the individual. So many of the banks are working very hard to try to get this program rolling on their end. And we know that, as time has passed since Friday, more and more banks have gotten things in order for that. So now that, Sunday obviously is difficult to contact your banker, but I would definitely try first thing tomorrow morning to contact your banker and get more information. And it's very possible that they have all of the necessary requirements in place to go ahead and start submitting your applications for you.
But by the way, most banks already allow you to do it online. So you don't even, because most banks do not have lobby hours. So it's almost impossible to get to a banker on a personal contact. And if you leave if you call him up, it takes hours for them to answer.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, you actually can log into your bank account, and there should be a link out there into the application.
Yes.
All right. I want to, once again, on behalf of the CIOGC Task Force and the Board of the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago, extend our thanks to our presenters for sharing their knowledge and time with us to give us further guidance on how we can address some of the challenges we all collectively face as a result of COVID-19. And I also want to thank all our participants for joining us. We ask that you share this information. And more importantly, there's been the offer to extend the materials that we've been presented this afternoon. Please enter your email. I know a number of you have already entered your email in the chat group, but we'll use this as inshallah, a mailing list to share this material, and also, inshallah, eventually put this up on our website. So at this particular point in time, I would like to turn the mic over to Irshad Khan, our chair, to close us out for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Mitchell, and thank you everyone for joining. This is very informative. A lot of information was shared very quickly, and I know most of you attended for addressing this financial sustainability in the masajid, and hopefully we were able to address your questions. I think we felt this topic is relevant for everyone, going through the difficult times that we're in. Please, share your email, and we are planning to post this on our website as well, so you should be able to get it, the material that was shared and presented today. Also want to share with you that we will continue with these webinars that we are hosting, relevant topic for our community. Our next webinar will be on Thursday, to know your facts. That will be presented as well on next Thursday. More information to come. And please, share and forward our information as they come. Mashallah, we had more than 90 attended today, and then we are also doing this Facebook Live. So thank you again for attending, taking your time, and if we were able to address your questions, please send your feedback, And if there is any other question that you might have, please send us a feedback as well so we can address this with our participant today, with the presenter, sorry. So with that, I want to thank you all for attending it, and inshallah more to come, and stay tuned. Jazakallah khair, and stay safe.
Thank you. I learned a lot. Financial sustainability. That was a good webinar. يا للهو يا للهو.
جزاك الله خير. الله حافظ.